Hey there, it's Courtney from Koana Art, and today we're going to be creating my May monthly bullet journal setup. This month's theme is going to be bumblebees. I've wanted to do a bee theme with a honeycomb pattern for quite a while now, and since I recently created a bee-themed sticker sheet, I figured what better time than now to create a whole theme around these cute little pollinators. I'm going to be using acrylic paint markers to draw in this theme, and I'm actually drawing this in a different notebook than I usually do, which I'll talk about a little bit more later on. I really love using acrylic paint markers because they lay down color so boldly and it's such a fun medium to work with. And over the past few months, they've really become my go-to medium for creating my bullet journal pages. For my cover page, I'm drawing this bee carrying an enormous flower through the air. It may be a bit hard to fully tell what's going on at the moment because I like to lay down the colors first and then come in afterwards to do the outlines. If I do the outlines first, they tend to get covered up later by the paint since the acrylic paint is so opaque. So this is still taking a little bit of getting used to, but by adding this gray color, you can hopefully start to see the shape of this bee coming to life. And if you've been following my channel or my videos for a while now, then you know that I've been working on this bumblebee sticker sheet for way too long now. And so I'm happy to announce that these stickers are finally available in both of my shops. So I'll link those below in the description if you're interested in checking them out or supporting my channel. It's been a goal of mine for the last half a year or so to create sticker sheets that go along with my bullet journal themes, but I also just find a lot of enjoyment in creating them for fun. So I made this bee-themed sticker sheet just for fun at first, but then I remembered that last year I had really wanted to create a honeycomb pattern in my journal, like we'll do on the next page, and so I just decided to combine everything together for the month of May. I'm using a dark gray fineliner to write in the word May, and then creating a dotted loop-de-loop over here to indicate the bee's flight pattern. I really love the softer look of this dark gray fineliner, but sometimes it can look a bit streaky when I layer it over the acrylic paint. So for this theme, I had intended to draw all of the outlines for the main characters in solid black, but for some reason I still ended up accidentally picking up the dark gray fineliner for the word May, but I really like how it turned out. So I tried to use the dark gray fineliner at first for the bee's antennas, but then I didn't like how streaky it was looking, so I did end up switching over to this black fineliner in the end. I really don't think there's much of a difference on camera, but it's something I go back and forth on literally every time I use acrylic paints and need to choose a fineliner. And after doing all of the outlining, I just need to come in and color in some of the white space near the edges of the fineliner, because it's kind of challenging for me to outline perfectly around where the color is. But it's always really easy to touch things up with paint markers. And then I'm just adding a few highlights to some of the doodles, and that's a wrap on the cover page. Instead of doing a quote page or another small drawing on this left-hand side, I actually decided to put my trackers over here this month. With having so many projects I'm working on recently and the Kawaii Drawing Club opening its doors to new members next week, I've had a lot of extra work on my plate, and so I wanted to create some pages that were a little bit simpler and quicker to create. In many of my previous videos and bullet journal setups, I usually dedicate 3 sets of pages to my monthly layouts, but it's a lot of extra work to create and edit for these videos, so I found a way to condense them down for these busier months. So I'm creating 4 tracker boxes here, and this month I'll be tracking reading the Bible every day, doing art or drawing every day, how often I'm working on my YouTube videos, and how often I'm posting my art content on my socials. Because it seems like if I don't track it, then things get forgotten very easily. I'm adding some light pink color to the days of the week, and then I have a mini calendar in each box so I can check off when I accomplish the task each day. And I thought these blue boxes looked a little bit plain, so I added some shines on them and some little dots around their outer edges. here's an up-close look at my cover and tracker pages. So I mentioned before that I'm using a different notebook this month, and that's because I've been working with the brand Arrtx quite a bit lately, and they reached out to ask if I wanted to try out their A5 size sketchbook. This is a beautiful hardcover sketchbook, and I love this green color. It has a shimmery look to it up close, and I've used their sketchbooks before, and I really enjoy them. This notebook is designed to lay flat when it's open so that you can easily draw or paint across both pages, and I really love this feature, and you'll see why on the next page I create. There's also a little pocket on the inside of the front cover, which is really nice. These pages also tear out of the notebook super easily, so you can give your drawings away or put them on the wall, however you like to display your art. And this paper is 180 GSM, and it has a very, very light texture to it, which I find really enjoyable for sketching on, but it's not so textured that it leaves white spaces when I color over it. So this next set of pages I'm going to create will be for a Honeycomb calendar page. I'm getting started by writing the word May in some faux calligraphy. And I'm not gonna lie, sketching this honeycomb pattern took an entire hour to do. I could see the pattern and how the lines should be drawn vertically, diagonally, and horizontally in order to make this pattern, but for some reason, sketching it was so challenging. I almost gave up on it partway through, but I had already invested so much time in it that I just kept tinkering around with it until I was finally able to make it work for the most part. It probably would have been a lot easier in my regular dot grid journal, but I really couldn't resist the opportunity to try out this sketchbook. As I mentioned, I've been really enjoying creating sticker sheets, and I think the A5 size notebook is the perfect size to create them in, because I doodle them in the journal and then I'm easily able to transfer them over to a sticker sheet that's almost the same size. I just have to scale it down a little. So I'm not gonna lie to you and pretend this is gonna become my go-to bullet journal or anything, but I just really wanted this sketchbook for my sticker drawings. There's something about a hardbound cover that feels so satisfying to draw in, and like I mentioned, the very light texture on these pages really adds to the fun of the sketching process for me. And I've used the larger version of this sketchbook before too, and I find that the acrylic paint markers take really well to it. You do have to be a little bit careful what kind of paper you choose when using markers like these, especially if you plan on layering your colors up a lot, because with cheaper papers, they can tend to pill or pull up the paper if you layer on them too much. But the quality of paper in this notebook is really great, and I never have any of the paper being pulled up, even though I like to layer my acrylic paints 2 or 3 times depending on the coverage I'm going for. I also really want to try colored pencils in this notebook because with the very slight tooth that this paper has, I feel like the colored pencils would really pop on it. All that being said, y'all know I love being able to score freebies for you when I can, so Arrtx was kind enough to agree to give one of these sketchbooks away to somebody in my audience. So if you're interested in winning one of these sketchbooks for yourself, go ahead and check out the description below and I'll explain how to enter the giveaway there. Overall, I really enjoy this sketchbook. I think the quality of paper is great and it works so well with so many different mediums, and since I'm always switching up how I like to create, this is just a really good sketchbook for me. So when I create these pages using acrylic markers, I always try to figure out which items or objects are going to be the furthest back on the page, and I like to paint those first. Then I paint the objects that will be overlapping those items, and so on and so forth, so I can hopefully avoid the colors being muddied up at all or having to layer down multiple coats of paint to cover up the colors behind it. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm a very visual person, so I find it difficult to put my thoughts into words at times. But for example, I knew that the honeycomb would be the furthest thing back on the page and that there would be many elements that would be layered on top of it. So I added in the honeycomb color first, and then added elements like the flowers and bees next. And with the bees, I added the yellow color down first because I knew the darker gray color would be very easy to draw over it, but not the other way around. The yellow is a rather light color, so if I do need to use it over something that's already painted, then I often need to use quite a few more coats of paint to really make it pop, as opposed to darker colors that can easily cover up different paint colors that might be below it. So there's somewhat a strategy to how I like to create these pages. It feels good to be figuring out how to use these acrylic paint markers in a way that works for me, seeing as at the beginning of this year I had never used them before and everything was an experiment. So I've filled in some of the extra white space with these little dots, and then I'm coloring in the centers of the remaining flowers. I had a little bit of extra space on the right-hand side of this page, so I decided to draw in 2 boxes, one that'll be a to-do list and one that will be an area for notes or random things that I want to jot down that I'll easily be able to see at a glance when I come back to this calendar page in the future. I thought the honeycomb was looking a bit plain, so I grabbed this peach-colored Tombow brush pen and began coloring in all of the individual honeycomb pieces. I really enjoy this color, and I think it worked out really well with the brown acrylic paint I had already laid down. This sketchbook also seems to handle these brush pens really well. I don't quite know how to describe it, but there's something a little bit different about this paper than my usual bullet journal paper, and it seemed to handle these markers very nicely. Next, I am adding a light shadow to the left and lower parts of each of the honeycomb to give them a bit of dimension. And I feel like doing this is really what gave this honeycomb the look I was going for. In the past, when I've seen other artists creating honeycomb, it's always looked so satisfying to do, and that's why this theme has been on my list to create since last year. I had really wanted to use it as a springtime theme though, and so I had to wait for the spring season to come around again. I'm using a black Fineliner once again to draw in all of the outlines, and some of the line work is really messy, but that's okay because I can easily touch it up with the paint markers later on. Paint markers are incredibly forgiving to work with, and I like that I can change my mind and clean up my mistakes really easily with them. I'm writing to-do and notes on these boxes, which was a little bit challenging for me with such a thin pen, so I went back and thickened up the lines a little bit. In the future, I'll probably use a Posca paint marker or something with a more solid bullet nib to do this, since I think those markers would be a bit more forgiving for someone like me who doesn't practice their hand lettering too often. Writing with a thicker nib seems to look smoother than writing with a thinner one in my experience. And I'm using a fine-tipped Posca paint marker to dot in the whites of the eyes. Then I'm using the white acrylic marker from the set I've been coloring with to add a bunch of highlights onto all of the little elements on this page. I may have gone a bit overboard with all of the doodles, sparkles, and dots on this page, but honestly, I just can't help myself and I don't know where to draw the line since I don't love seeing a whole ton of white space on pages. Next, I'm writing in the days of the week across the top of the honeycomb, and this is not going to be a super functional calendar, especially since the dates go up and down to match the pattern, but honestly, I don't really care. I thought it was so fun to create, and sometimes, actually most of the time, when I make these pages, it's more for the fun of creating the art than it is about actually being able to use it as a planner. Let me know in the comments how you like to use your planner, and if it's more for the fun of creating it or for the functionality of being able to write in it and use it as a planner. And for the finishing touches, I'm just adding some white highlights to the opposite side of the shadows in this honeycomb. And here's an up-close look at the honeycomb calendar page. I had so much fun creating this one. And now for the final flip through of the May monthly pages. Be sure to check out the description if you'd like to enter the giveaway for a chance to win one of these sketchbooks for yourself. I hope you have an amazing month, and I'll see you in the next video.